often legislation that grabs the headlines. But it's equally important to be aware of what a presidential administration does with its regulatory power. With the modern expansion of the regulatory state, presidents have a tremendous amount of power to affect our economy and federal policy through regulation. And President Biden's made aggressive use of regulatory power to push his agenda and to burden our economy in the process. President Biden's big spending habits are well known. The $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan spending spree that he signed into law. The trillions of dollars in new government spending he's proposed and pushed for over the course of his administration. But his carelessness with taxpayer dollars is not limited to legislative initiatives. President Biden has also pushed through regulations costing almost $360 billion and requiring 220 million hours of paperwork. 220 million hours of paperwork. Now, that's a big compliance burden, Mr. President, and a good reminder of the fact that regulations have consequences. Consequences for individual Americans, consequences for American businesses, and consequences for our economy. Take the Biden administration's proposed rule to require federal contractors to disclose their direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions, and in some cases, not only their own direct and indirect emissions, but also related emissions over which the contractor has no control. This rule is not only impractical, it's unclear how contractors would even begin to gauge emissions over which they have no control, but it's likely to be both costly and burdensome. By the government's own reckoning, the rule would cost affected small businesses more than $600 million over the first 10 years. And the National Federation of Independent Business notes that the actual cost is likely to be much higher. With compliance costs like this, why would any small business want to apply for a federal contract? And this is just one of a number of costly regulations the Biden administration has put in place, or is attempting to put in place to advance its extreme environmental agenda. A new rule from the Environmental Protection Agency that will require a drastic reduction in nitrogen oxide emissions from heavy-duty vehicles is not only likely to substantially raise the price of new trucks, it could drive some smaller trucking companies out of business entirely, which would be problematic at any time, but is especially problematic given the supply chain problems that we're still experiencing. A proposed rule to prohibit the sale of cooktops that consume more than a certain amount of energy per year would likely make roughly half of the gas stoves currently sold in the United States illegal and could threaten manufacturers with substantial losses.
Our president is taking action this week. President Biden has just issued his first veto of his presidency on a new piece of legislation, and many disagree with this decision. New data has also revealed that more than 5 million households are still behind on rent. But experts have suggested several ways to address this issue. Dear friends, please make sure that you watch until the end of this video to hear about all of the new details. Also, I will be announcing 2 winners for the Walmart gift card giveaway this coming Friday. If you'd like to enter the weekly giveaway, friends, simply click and like several of my videos and then comment below the keyword of each video that you watch. My dear friends, the more videos that you comment on, the greater your chances of winning the giveaways. Today, President Biden issued the first veto of his presidency on a resolution to overturn a retirement investment rule that allows managers of retirement funds to consider the impact of climate change and other environmental, social, and governance factors when picking investments. Republican lawmakers led the push to pass the resolution through Congress, arguing the rule pushes their liberal agenda on Americans and will hurt retirees' bottom lines, while Democrats say it's not about ideology and will help investors. The resolution, which would rescind a Department of Labor rule, passed both chambers of Congress, with Democratic Senators Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Jon Tester of Montana voting with Republicans in the Senate. President Biden said in a social media post they couldn't take into consideration investments that wouldn't be impacted by climate impacted by overpaying executives, and that's why I decided to veto it. The veto makes good on Biden's frequent promise to veto legislation passed by the GOP-controlled House he disagrees with, even before Republicans took control of that chamber. President Biden often mentioned his ability to nix their priorities. Opponents of the rule could try to override Biden's veto, but at this point, it appears unlikely they could get 2/3 of the majority needed in each chamber to do so. Biden's first presidential veto reflects the reality of a changed political order in Washington, D.C., with Republicans now in control of the House after they won back the chamber from Democrats in the 2022 midterm elections. Previously, Democrats controlled both the House and the Senate. Now the president's party only has a majority in the Senate. Most legislation passed by the current GOP-controlled House will not be able to pass a Democratic-controlled Senate. But the resolution to overturn the investment rule only needed a simple majority to pass in the Senate. Republican lawmakers advanced it under the Congressional Review Act, which allows Congress to roll back regulations from the executive branch without needing to clear the 60-vote threshold in the Senate that's necessary for most legislation. Opponents of the rule have argued that it politicizes retirement investments and that the Biden administration is using it as a way to promote a liberal agenda. So, dear friends, what are your thoughts on what's going on in Washington, D.C.? Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section below. With roughly 2 more months before the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services ends the 3-year crisis public health emergency, more than 5 million of the nation's households remain behind on their rent. Altogether, tenants continue to owe nearly $11 billion in rental debt during the first 2 weeks of February. On average, renters who are behind owe $2,094. Fortunately, the public health crisis led to the creation of a number of new protections for struggling renters, some of which remain in place. Most rental assistance programs that opened during the crisis are now closed, but some are still accepting applications. On the National Low-Income Housing Coalition's website, you can find a state-by-state guide of relief options and their status. Renters should keep track of the rental assistance opportunities available to them and apply as quickly as possible when they see one open. The money tends to run out fast. On Tuesday, the Texas Rent Relief Program began accepting applications for aid, but it's already scheduled to stop doing so this Thursday. A notice on its website reads, "Within the first 24 hours of reopening, requests for assistance far exceeded available funding." Friends, it's worth researching and familiarizing yourself with any rights you have as a tenant. Many of those rights expanded during the crisis. In certain cities, for example, landlords are now limited in how much they can raise your rent. So if you're facing an eviction because of an increase that was illegal, it is worth knowing. You may be able to bring this up in housing court or with your landlord. In some cities and towns, you are entitled to a set amount of notice with an eviction, such as at least 90 days in specific cases in Portland, Maine. During the school year, educators and families with school-aged children recently got new eviction protections in Oakland, California. Friends, that is the end of my daily stimulus update video for this Monday. Thank you so very, very much, dear friends, for being part of this community and for being here every single day. I will be announcing 2 winners this coming Friday for the Walmart gift card giveaway. If you would like to enter the giveaway, friends, all you have to do is click and like several of my videos and then comment below the keyword of each video that you watch. My friends, the more videos that you watch and then comment on, the greater your chances of winning the giveaways. Thank you and have a wonderful and very blessed day.